Let's get Grayson's grades on this game, which it was ugly, man. And I know a lot of people who read Grayson's grades last night weren't happy with the grades. They weren't happy with the grader. They thought the grades were too positive.
Wow.
Let's bring Scott Grayson in, Fox 29, Props and Locks, Thursday nights. And, of course, Grayson's grades, 97.3, ESPN.com. You know, Scott, you and I were in Minnesota a couple of years ago. This game did not go nearly as well as that game, and the report card kind of reflects that. There were some people that were not too happy with the grader this week. Let's start with Carson Wentz getting a C, and I saw a lot of people getting on Carson Wentz's case. I kind of agree with you. I put him kind of in the middle there, but what'd you see from Wentz? I mean, there's a lot of people saying he has to be better, so you gave him a C.
Well, let me start with this. I mean, I saw some of the comments, too, and I just got to say that, look, you know, if you grade with your green heart here and your green blood, you're going to write F for everybody. But at the bottom line, when you look at that game, they scored 20 points. I cannot put that loss on the offense. Now, were there some points left out on the field? Absolutely. Did Doug Peterson leave some points out there? Sure. But they scored 20 points, and this defense, you know, we've all known it. And if there's anything good that, in my mind, that could come out of it, it's that you look at what those corners did or did not do in that game, and there has to be a sense of urgency throughout the front office to say, yo, Howie, you got to do something, and you've got to do it now. You know, now it used to be Jalen Ramsey was the hot commodity that was up for potential trade. Now Patrick Peterson. In my mind, they got to get somebody. They got to do something because what Kirk Cousins did to them yesterday is exactly what every offensive coordinator should be looking to do to these corners for the rest of the season.
Yeah, because you gave an F to Sidney Jones, Russell Douglas, and Craig James. F, F, F.
And that's where the game was lost in my mind. Now, you could argue the front four didn't get enough pressure, and I could buy into that, and I would agree with that. But the bottom line is some of those were just straight go routes that, you know, Kirk Cousins hit his drop and put the ball in the air, and they just ran under it behind the defense. It just was ugly to watch. It was tough to watch. Despite all of that, it was hard to believe at one point in the third quarter they were only down by 4. But, yeah, those three guys, I just think.
Yeah, they were down 4, and that's where that field goal comes into play because I remember turning to my girlfriend and saying, see, if they would have kicked that field goal, I would have got fantasy points from Elliott, and they would have only been down by a point because they were down 4. He kicks the field goal. It was that 3 points there. They would have had the lead.
Well, they
would have been down a point. They would have been down a point.
Let's talk about that. I mean, I will give Doug the benefit of the doubt at this point on a lot of things, but to me, if you're going to tell me that Jake Elliott can throw the ball and get you 4 yards better than Carson Wentz, then we've got a big problem. And I just did not understand where, you know, and that's something you tend to do on like a long field goal when you know they're selling out to block it. You look at that, that was more or less a regular chip shot. That's just a bad spot to try to call a fake field goal if you're going to go there. And honestly, you take the points and go into the half with a little extra momentum. And I agree with you. You're looking at, you know, you scored points, you're going to get the ball back to start the second half. Hey, maybe something's going here. And they had momentum on their side in the middle of that game. But they just couldn't stop, you know. And so then you're right, Mike. You're down 1 and you go and you give up a touchdown. It's still a one-possession game because it would be down by 8. You know, it's a different game. But the bottom line is they did not deserve to win that game the way that the defense played, gave up too many yards on the ground, and allowed the passing game to get – I mean, all over the place. And I sat there at one point going, if I'm Jim Schwartz, what can you really do? There was nothing you could really do because your personnel could not match up with what they were doing. And I just thought that, you know, it exposed the Eagles in a big way.
Hey, Scott, it's Jeff. I'm wondering if you also considered putting with your Fs the safeties Malcolm and Rodney, because I think at least on 2 of the 4 or 3 big touchdowns that Rasul gave up, he was playing a leverage to funnel the receiver to the inside. Now, he could have done a better job of trying to keep with that receiver, but it seemed to me he was playing that leverage because he felt the help would be over the top. And Malcolm and Rodney, I think on a different one, they bid on underneath routes that took that help away. So I was surprised by the miscommunication by 2 veteran safeties.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I was kept watching. I mean, first of all, I think the broadcast did a good job of highlighting that when you were watching it. They pointed that out, which I thought was fair to Rasul because he was expecting some inside help, and I agree with you. You can't just because you're expecting that help doesn't mean you just keep hanging along the sideline. You got to follow the receiver in a little bit. But, yes, and I kept looking for some of those things on the sideline. This is what, unfortunately I couldn't get to Minnesota yesterday. And, Jeff, when you're there, you can look for those kind of interactions on the sideline.
Yeah.
And you did see a little bit of that with Malcolm and Rodney, not so much yelling at those corners or getting on them, but almost like trying to say, look, we're not communicating right here, and something's got to change. And, I agree with you that I did not end up grading the safeties, but I thought that, like you, there were certainly some plays where they left the corners out, and the corners expected some help. And, it's not the first time that's happened this season either. So something's not right in that film room, and they've got to figure it out.
Yeah, one guy, and you gave him an A, I do got to disagree with you there a little bit, is Alshon, because he had a couple of drops. And now, I know he had 10 catches, he had a touchdown, but he had a couple of big drops, and he has not been the reliable guy. And this goes back to that playoff game last year where he had the drop. He might have been the best guy they had yesterday, but I'm not sure that was an A effort from him.
Well, I was toying between an A and a B for him, and I'll agree with you there. I just thought that, he was the only guy that seemed to be able to get open for Wentz to throw to. Because, look, give the Vikings credit. In my opinion, they essentially took Ertz out of the game. And they did a good job of that. And so Alshon has to step up there, and he has to make plays. Look, I will admit, too, the one ball down the sideline, stay in bounds, and that's a touchdown. I didn't see anybody downfield behind them.
Feels like you're talking yourself into giving him a C.
Well, it's at the end of the day, I did look at it like he did make some good catches when Wentz needed somebody to. He did have a couple of drops. You're right. It's just contagious over there, and I just, as I was doing the grades, I kept doing it from the mindset of the offense didn't lose the game. The defense really did. You can't expect to score over 38 points, and have to win that way. Not with this team the way it's built. So, you could argue with Alshon. I can hear the compliment or the criticism on that for sure.
On the bright side, Scott, 2 Bs to 2 defensive linemen, Brandon Graham, who picked up his 4th sack in 2 weeks, Hassan Ridgeway, obviously. Run defense was going to be big. And if you look, and this is probably the most amazing thing about giving up 38 points, is that you would have thought if they were going to give up that many points, it's because Dalvin Cook was going to run all over them. That would be the only way, but they didn't because the Eagles were pretty stout
and
there.
I thought Ridgeway, he was all over the place.
Yeah, Ridgeway was good. That's a little bit of a bright spot going into the Cowboys, who you think are going to try to run the ball with Zeke.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it any better, Jeff. That's exactly what I was thinking. Was Hassan Ridgeway helped? I put this in the grades. Helped answer the question of who can play inside next to Fletcher Cox, and he definitely asserted himself in that game to say, look at me, give me some more snaps, I'm ready. I thought that was very bright spot. He was off the line really well. He did create some havoc. And look, I also give the Vikings credit. Their opening script was all runs on the perimeter. They were using the Eagles' aggression up the middle to their detriment, essentially. And it was a great play calls to start outside. So then when they went to run inside, the Eagles were starting to worry about protecting contain, and there were holes to run through. I just thought that you're right. You would have thought that with 38 points, Dalvin Cook would have had a huge day. And look, he got his. There's no doubt. But it was more through the air. And yeah, I've really liked the way Brandon Graham has played this season. To me, he's been one of the bright spots on that defensive line. And like you said, Hassan Ridgeway played very well, and they are going to need him to help slow down Zeke Elliott next week.
I'm curious, Scott. What kind of grade through 6 games would you give Howie Roseman? I feel like he's taking a beating today, but some of the players who are playing well were really good moves also by Howie, including Hassan Ridgeway for a 6th or a 7th round pick, and Andrew Sandejo was a good value signing who came up with a really important interception yesterday. And some of the obviously players who are playing well were brought in here by Howie, but he is taking a beating from some of the fans today.
Well, and you know what? I think he should. Like I said, there've been players to get. Now you're right. It's not all. It's not easy. You just pick up the phone and say, "I want this guy, and let's make it happen." You don't want to mortgage the future either. And what they were asking for Ramsey certainly was a lot. But in terms of what grade I'd give Howie, right now I'd give him a B with the potential for it to be a D if they don't do something by the trade deadline to – look, the NFC is wide open. I think we can all agree on that. The the NFC's pretty wide open, and the Eagles are in a bad spot in the sense that their 3 losses are to conference opponents. So when you look at tiebreakers down the road, but you got to worry about your division. Your division is wide open, essentially. It's you and Dallas, which is the way we all thought it was going to be. And this one next week is huge for that reason. But you ask me, how can the Eagles or what can Howie do to try to help this team? This conference is open. I think 1 move or 2 moves, potentially, if they're the right moves, could get you head and shoulders above a lot of other teams around here. And I think Howie's got to get off the bench here. And I get not wanting to mortgage away draft picks too much, but you got to do something. And right now I'd say B, because you're right. I like Jordan Howard. I like that pickup. That's Howie. I thought Andre Dillard was poised and ready. I put him in grades. He did not have a good game yesterday. Flat out got beat on multiple plays that totally affected Wentz. And, I just think Howie's got, to me, this season is in his hands right now.
Well, and guess what? This season, you got to make the decision. Are we going for a Super Bowl this season? Because if you do, we were talking about this before you came on, Scott, is if you make a big move now, you could be looking at some lean years after this because a lot of these guys are going to get older and they're going to be going out and, whatever's behind them, they haven't drafted all that well. So you either have to make the decision, hey, we're going to go for it with the group we have right now. And you kind of owe it to this group when you have the quarterback and you got the veterans that you do. I think you almost have to take this team now and say, you know what, we just got to go after it now because the draft choices that they have coming up because of their success are not helping them all that much.
No, and you can look at guys that they potentially have missed in the draft and think, well, that guy could be there with your pick that you're giving away, or you can end up missing and whiffing on the pick that you have, a first-round pick potentially you're going to give away to get somebody. But if you can get a guy like a Patrick Peterson or a Jalen Ramsey that can help you win this year at that corner spot and at least help take away some of what these teams are exploiting, look, I think you're right, though. You have to ask yourself, can we win the Super Bowl this year? And if you feel, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, if you feel the answer is yes, you got to go get that guy, Jalen Ramsey or who else. And you're right. You've got the quarterback. You got a lot of the pieces. And no, you don't want to mortgage the future, but how many times can you honestly look yourself in the mirror and seriously say, we have a shot this year. Let's go get it. Because like we've seen in this city, the one in all time, when you have that opportunity, you, in my opinion, go after it. And I think that's what these fans are chomping at the bit for. They want to see the team.
After watching yesterday, right? After watching yesterday, I'm wondering what Howie's decision-making process, how it's changed. Scott Grayson, by the way, Fox 29, he'll be in Dallas next week, and we'll have a report from Jerry's World. First place on the line, Eagles and Cowboys. And don't forget, check out Props and Locks, Fox 29, your host, Scott Grayson. Grayson's grades are all posted now at 973ESPN.com. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And Scott Grayson, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.